The Santa Ana winds were blowing that night, the kind Joan Didion once wrote about, hot, dry, and persistent, carrying the uneasy promise that anything could happen. They rattled the dried palm fronds along Mulholland Drive, sounding like skeletal fingers tapping against a window pane. Sarah maneuvered a dented Honda Civic up the winding canyon road, the engine whining in protest. She was 20 minutes early for her first shift at the Chrysalis, yet she felt perpetually behind. The nursing agency had been vague about the details, explicit only about the NDA and the paycheck. $10,000 a week. In Los Angeles, that kind of money didn't just buy silence, it bought your soul, lightly toasted. The clinic didn't look like a place of healing. It looked like a fortress designed by an architect who hated sunlight. Perched on a cliff edge overlooking the glittering grid of the San Fernando Valley, the building was a brutalist slab of concrete and dark glass. There was no signage, only a heavy iron gate that swung open silently as a car approached, sensing her arrival with a predatory efficiency. Inside, the air was aggressively cold, smelling not of antiseptic and sickness, but of expensive white tea and ozone. The silence was the first thing that struck Sarah. Hospitals, even private ones, usually hummed with the biological rhythm of life, beeping monitors, squeaking rubber soles, the distant murmur of pain. The Chrysalis was tomb quiet. "Miss Bishop, you're prompt." Dr. Aris Sterling stood behind the reception desk, though he looked more like a CEO than a physician. His suit was tailored to within an inch of its life, and his teeth were capped with a white so blinding it looked porcelain fake. He didn't blink enough. "I try to be," Sarah said, fighting the urge to hug her cardigan tighter around herself. "The agency said I'm covering the East Wing?" "Specifically the recovery suites," Sterling corrected, his voice smooth and devoid of warmth, like a stone skipping over a frozen lake. "We value privacy above all else here, Sarah. Our clients are distinctive. They come to us when the world has drained them, and they require a specific kind of renewal." He handed her a key card. It was black, matte, and heavy. "Tonight, you are assigned to Cabin 7, Mr. Arthur Pendleton. He is recovering from a cosmetic procedure. He is to be kept sedated, but conscious. He may experience hallucinations. You are to ignore them." "Hallucinations?" Sarah asked. "A side effect of the anesthesia," Sterling said, his eyes narrowing slightly. "He may speak of things under the bed, of noises. Do not engage, do not look. Just administer the drip at 11 p.m. precisely." Sarah nodded, taking the card. "Understood." "And Sarah," Sterling leaned forward. The smell of him hit her then, a faint underlying scent of copper masked by heavy cologne. "Tonight is the new moon, the dark phase. We take our lighting protocols very seriously. Do not turn on the overheads in Cabin 7. Use the floor lamps only." The walk to the East Wing felt like descending into the belly of a sleeping beast. The hallway was long, carpeted in a plush burgundy that swallowed her footsteps. The sconces on the walls flickered with imitation gaslight, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to stretch and grasp at her ankles. Cabin 7 was at the very end of the corridor, isolated from the other rooms by a heavy set of double doors. When she swiped her card, the lock disengaged with a sound like a bone snapping. The room was vast, furnished with mid-century modern pieces that looked uncomfortable and sharp. In the center, dominated by the shadows of the room, lay the bed. It was an antique four-poster, oddly out of place amidst the modern decor, draped in heavy velvet. Mr. Pendleton was awake. He was a man who once was a titan of the tech industry, a face Sarah recognized from Forbes covers a decade ago. Now he looked like a husk. His skin was gray, pulled tight over his skull, and his eyes were wide, darting frantically around the room. "Who are you?" he wheezed, his voice wet. "I'm Sarah. I'm your nurse for the night, Mr. Pendleton." She moved to the bedside, setting down a bag. She checked the vital monitor. His heart rate was erratic, tachycardic spikes followed by sudden drops. "Is it tonight?"
he whispered, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His hand was ice cold. "Check the calendar. Is it the dark night?" Sarah gently pried his fingers loose. "It's just a Tuesday, sir. Try to relax." "No moon," he whimpered, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. "Sterling promised me another year of earnings. He said the contract held, but I didn't pay the premium. I didn't think they'd come this soon." "Mr. Pendleton, you're confusing yourself." Sarah checked her watch. 10:45. "I'm gonna get your drip ready." She turned her back to him to prepare the IV bag. The room was dim, lit only by a single floor lamp in the corner that cast an amber pool of light. Outside the thick glass windows, the wind howled, battering the clinic. Then the smell hit her. It wasn't the white tea anymore. It was sharp, acrid, like a box of matches struck all at once, mixed with something fouler, rotten eggs, sulfur. It was so strong she tasted it on the back of her tongue. "Sarah!" Pendleton shrieked. She spun around. The old man was pressing himself against the headboard, his legs drawn up to his chest. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the floor, specifically at the space beneath the bed. "It's thick. Oh, God, it's thick tonight." Sarah frowned, stepping closer. "Mr. Pendleton, please." "Don't step in it." She looked down. The shadows in the room were behaving strangely. The light from the corner lamp should have cast a simple, elongated shadow of the bed frame, but the darkness underneath the bed wasn't just an absence of light. It had texture. It looked viscous, like a pool of crude oil that had spilled across the expensive hardwood floor. And it was expanding. The blackness oozed outward, defying the physics of the light source. It crept over the edge of the rug. Sarah watched, mesmerized and horrified, as the shadow touched the leg of the bedside table. The wood hissed as if touched by acid. "The drip," Pendleton begged. "Put me under. Please, don't let me be awake for it." Sarah's hands shook as she reached for the IV bag, but she fumbled. A plastic vial of sedative rolled off the table. It skittered across the floor and rolled toward the bed. It didn't stop at the edge of the darkness. It rolled into the gloom. There was no sound of the vial hitting the wall or stopping. It simply vanished into the gloom beneath the mattress. But then a sound emerged from that impossible depth. Scritch, scritch. It sounded like metal dragging against bone, or a claw testing the durability of the floorboards from below. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She crouched down, driven by an instinct she immediately regretted, to look under the bed. She needed to prove to herself it was just a shadow, just a trick of the low light and the sedatives fuming in the air. She lowered her head, cheek almost touching the floorboards. The darkness under the bed was absolute. It was a void, but as her eyes adjusted, the void moved. 2 points of dull yellow luminescence blinked open in the heavy, oily dark, eyes that were far too wide apart to belong to anything human. A hand, if it could be called a hand, shot out from the gloom. It was composed of solid shadow, freezing cold and heavy as lead. It didn't grab her. It slammed against the floorboards inches from her face, leaving deep, gouged claw marks in the wood. Sarah scrambled back, gasping, scrambling on her hands and knees until her back hit the door. "Mr. Pendleton," she started, looking up. But Mr. Pendleton wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring at the foot of his bed, where the oily shadow had begun to rise like a tide, pouring upward over the sheets, grabbing his ankles. Sarah reached for the door handle. It wouldn't turn. From the other side of the heavy oak door, she heard the distinct metallic click of a deadbolt sliding home. The metallic click of the deadbolt didn't just seal the door, it severed the timeline of Sarah's life, cutting the before away from the after. She threw her shoulder against the solid oak, a futile, panic-driven reflex. The wood didn't yield a millimeter. Outside, in the plush, carpeted corridor of the St. Jude Rejuvenation Clinic, footsteps retreated. They were calm, rhythmic footsteps, the click-clack of expensive Italian lopers on marble. Dr. Sterling's lopers. "Open the door," Sarah screamed, her voice cracking, sounding small and pathetic against the acoustic dampening tiles of the luxury suite. "Dr. Sterling, he's having a seizure! Open the damn door!" But it wasn't a seizure. Behind her, the sound of tearing fabric ripped through the air, wet and thick, like a butcher parting ribs. Sarah spun around, her back pressed flat against the door, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The room, usually bathed in the soft ambient glow of Los Angeles city lights filtering through the blinds, had changed. The shadows in the corners had detached themselves from the walls. They weren't just absences of light, they were viscous, living fluid of darkness that flowed onto the floorboards with a wet slop. The smell hit her then, a sudden suffocating wave of rotten eggs and burning copper, sulfur.